So welcome guys, and thanks for joining me on Tap, otherwise known as the Alphabet Podcast. You should know by now, I'm your host, Leanna Devine, therapist based in Brixton, South London. So today guys, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I did warn you guys at the end of the last one that I'll be doing a freestyle podcast. So sometimes topics bring themselves to me and my attention. So today we're going to talk Black History Month. We're going to mention a little bit about World Mental Health Day. That's today. I'm recording Tuesday the 10th of October, World Mental Health Day. How many of us actually are even aware? We're going to talk A Tale of Two Murders. We're going to take a little look at misogyny and kind of ways that we can all combat it, because it's something that has been rearing its extremely ugly head. A lot of talk around that. I've had a lot of talk with my friends around misogyny. And then we're going to talk the big elephant in the room, knife crime. But we're not just going to look at it from a negative perspective. So we're not just going to look at who's to blame, because that often comes up when we discuss knife crime. And I think that is a very negative place to start a conversation like that. So we're going to have a look at some of the factors that potentially contribute to knife crime. Is it actually a knife problem or a mindset problem? So that's what I'll put out to you right now and get you to start thinking about. And we'll try to look at some of the things we can do, because we can talk all day about who's to blame, but actually that doesn't change anything. So let's just crack on. Today, the 10th of October, World Mental Health Day. I must admit, I did know at the beginning of the week that it was Mental Health Day. The beginning of the week was just yesterday, but me being me, I forgot. So I woke up this morning and I saw a lot of stuff on my feed about World Mental Health Day. And I think anything that kind of brings mental health into awareness is a good thing. So this podcast is attempting to do something similar. I feel like we have to talk about the stigmas that are so out there when it comes to mental health. So obviously, these podcasts, they aim to try to break down some of those stigmas, some of those barriers, and to get people looking at mental health in a different way. But days like World Mental Health Day, where it creates awareness, is a good thing. So maybe I should ask you guys, what are you doing for your mental health, actively doing for your mental health? I've mentioned in the past, practicing gratitude is a good way to actively promote mental health. Self-care being a very important part of maintaining positive mental health. So maybe today, some extra self-care in aid of World Mental Health Day. So let's all just be kind to ourselves, kind to each other, and explore our own attitudes towards mental health, because it's likely that all of us have loved ones, friends that are affected by mental illness. There's probably times in our life when we've had poor mental health and know what it feels like to not necessarily feel like your best self. Let's just crack on. Today is the 10th of October, and I kid you not, yesterday was the first time that I remembered that it was Black History Month. To some, how do you guys feel about Black History Month? Should we still have a Black History Month in 2023? What do you think? Not too sure. I know some of the people I speak to will say I'm Black every day. So what does a month dedicated to Black history do? I actually wonder if it's still the same in schools, because when I was going to schools many, many moons ago, the only Black history that they ever taught was slavery. So I wonder if some young people can get back to me and let me know what Black history consists of these days. Is it still just slavery, which is very traumatizing and stigmatizing for a lot of people? Are they showing us that our ancestors were actually kings and queens? I wonder. But let's have a look at some of the pros of it. So it brings Black history, Black issues into focus. I feel in communities, you see like loads of free activities that you can do and engage with. I remember being at school and college, and maybe them having some food with a little bit more seasoning in the canteen. But what does Black History Month mean to Black people? Is it something that means more to white people, I wonder? Let's embrace Black history. As Black people, we're Black every day. So what are the pros? I don't know. You guys tell me. We're celebrating difference and diversity, but we know that society has a problem with racism. So does Black History Month do anything to raise things in regards to the present? Because Black history is fine. What about the Black present experience? I'm more focused on that. So all the oppression, the misogynoir, the outright racism, the covert, and all the different types of racism. and how it oppresses people and affects their mental health. Would that be a better way to maybe look at the Black experience? But it's here, let's embrace it. Black History Month, hooray. But what I will say is I went to Peckham yesterday. It's still a shutdown. Peckham Hair Shop. I don't think you're any longer. And to right and all, I don't know how many of you, I'm sure that the people that know me, I know they're all aware of the Peckham Hair Shop incident, as we shall refer to it. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of it, because I actually think the way how people went into the ins and outs of it, i.e. she stole this, or she shouldn't have done this, or she did this, or what was the reason why this man has so viciously assaulted this Black woman, at one point strangling her so she couldn't even speak. All of those ins and outs are the misogynoir. It's that whole idea that somehow Black women do something to feed into this. The only comment I will make about it is this has been going on for years. It needs to stop. I go to Black hair shops and predominantly they're run by Asian people, and that's no problem at all. The majority of the Asian hair shops that I've been to through the course of my life, you know, pleasant experience. I buy my stuff, I go. But the problem is, and I'll say this to, if just by any chance, if there's any Asian shopkeepers listening, you have to change your ways. And I'll tell you why. You come into our communities, that's the Black community, a lot of inner city areas where a lot of your customers are Black, and Black women mainly. So I know there are some people amongst us that share aspects of the culture and maybe buy hair products as well, maybe have children of mixed heritage and also frequent those shops. But I don't know if your experience is necessarily the same. But I will say that exclusively they are selling to the Black community. So there has to be some respect for the majority of your customers. So maybe for Black History Month, what I might do is big up the neighborhood heroes. So I'm over here in SW9 in Brixton, and the neighborhood heroes we have here are Respect Rebellion. He's very vocal. He's a big part of why the Peckham Hair Shop is still closed for business, and it is still closed for business. So I think this happened around about the 11th of September, somewhere in the beginning of September, don't quote me. But it was amazing how many people that, even despite seeing the footage of this 10'10" man, so we just say a 10'10" man assaulting a woman, it's straight away, it's what did she do to deserve it? And all I would say is that doesn't happen to an Asian woman. That Asian man does not put his hands on an Asian woman, and it doesn't happen to a white woman. These are the kind of things that exclusively happen to Black women. So Peckham Hair Shop, stay shut down. Trading standards are onto you. The campaign for truth and justice. These things will not be allowed to continue. So shut down for you. I feel like Skepta should enter the building. We can't do all that on YouTube, but I would love to be able to play that. It's a shutdown. And that is how we need to operate as a community, because we do have power. Like I say, I ain't got no stats around it, but I would say at least 80% of your customers are Black people. So if you have that discrimination towards Black people and Black women in particular, maybe you shouldn't be selling hair products in our community. So that kind of leads nicely on to the idea of Black-owned businesses. Now, I've always bought into this in principle. Black-owned businesses, every other community supports their own, and it's not a racism thing. It's just that Black people in particular, in our everyday experiences, experience more racism. So for a lot of people, they will feel more comfortable dealing with people from within their own community. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. But I'd love to support Black businesses. I mean, I have Black hairdressers. I have a Black hair shop that I usually go to, Eritrean. And to me, it just makes me feel a bit better about giving something to my community. My experience is different. I'm not racially profiled, so there's no one following me around the shop, unless they're trying to help me. So I do think Black-owned businesses do need to be supported by the Black community. But what I will say is, for all of you out there that are running these Black-owned businesses, please don't give us more of the same, okay? So we can get over the long face. We all have a long face sometimes, and we understand those nuances within our culture. We can deal with the long face. That's like a stereotype, and it's got a lot better. But what I will say, and it's the experience of a lot of my friends, even just this week, I was having conversations with someone very close to me, and that was trying to buy a particular hair product. And because of all of the outrage, because of the Peckham Hair Shop, she decided that she's exclusively going to seek out a Black-owned hair shop. And I think she went to a few. But the issue is, Black-owned businesses, let me ask you a question. So not only do we have to pay the tax that the government put on, I don't know, is it about 20%, something like that, VAT or whatever they name it, but now you want us to pay a melanin tax. Yeah, a melanin tax. And I say that because I understand that when you're not buying in bulk, things will be more expensive and you have to pass those costs on to your customers. But please don't rip us off. Yeah, I'm not going to come to your business and pay £3-4 more for an item. I will take myself to the Asian shopkeeper reluctantly where the prices are more fair. So are you blocking your own blessings in that sense? Because I feel like there's so much people that are open now to this idea of Black-owned businesses, but we need to get it right. You don't just want your customer to come once and maybe pay your extortionate prices, but that customer doesn't return. How does that help your business? And how does that help promote Black-owned business in general? Because there will be a lot of generalization. There are a lot of people that want to go Black-owned, but don't want to be ripped off. So we do need to look at that. And in regards to the Peckham Hair Shop incident, I think we all need to look again at why we feel like there has to be a reason when something happens to a Black woman. So we're still not validating the experiences of Black women. And that is one of the things that we can do as other Black women, Black men, white women, all of us. Don't immediately jump to this narrative that the media might be pushing, that somehow this really threatening Black woman has done something wrong and somehow contributed to her own assault. We don't do that with white women. We don't do that with any other community of women, and we need to stop doing it with Black women. So that rant's out of the way. We've covered World Mental Health Day. But now, I suppose you can call it rant number 2, is the media. And I will include social media in that to a certain degree because a lot of us consume, for example, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes if you're always on a platform and you see these comments that are being made, without realizing it, you unconsciously assume it to be your own experience, and it can become quite an echo chamber. Bring back hanging, let's, capital punishment, that's the way forward. It's the parents' fault. So we buy into this thing. It's the postcode. These kids are fighting over postcodes, which is a way to dehumanize. Propaganda is very powerful, and the media, they perpetuate those stereotypes. Sorry to disappoint you, anyone that believes that, but these young children are not losing, and these young people are not losing their lives down to postcodes. I live in Brixton. The postcodes are fighting each other. It's about a lot more than postcodes. So that's the first thing. But what was really interesting is the tale of 2 murders. So you would have to live under a rock not to have heard about the tragic circumstances in Croydon, where a 15-year-old schoolgirl, Eliane and Dan, tragically lost their life. That was on, I believe, the 27th of September or thereabouts. And I think I was equally horrified as the rest of the nation. I think it's every parent's worst nightmare. Your child goes to school and doesn't come home. So I think that's part of why so many people resonated with that, is it really is every parent's worst nightmare. And it's something that, if we don't do something, may continue to happen. But that was reported, and I saw a lot of things. And whilst the perpetrator has not been named, I'm on TikTok a lot, and he's been named. You know the young man's identity. You know Eliane and Dan's name. But how many of you know the name Hubert Isaac? So Hubert Isaac. Okay, I'll wait. So I went to my mum's house yesterday, and I was literally talking to her about some of the things that I was going to discuss on this podcast. And my mum's someone that's quite in the pocket with social media. And so if there's anything that really goes on in the world, and she will know about it. So she was my litmus test on this occasion. And I said, Mum, don't you think it's terrible the way the media reports stuff? I said, look at that poor man in Bristol, Hubert Isaac. And she said to me, Leanna, who's Hubert Isaac? And I had to explain. So I'm still waiting. Has anybody told me who he is? Okay, so on the 29th of September, so that's 2 days after the events in Croydon, in St. Paul's, an area of Bristol, a Black man in his 60s was murdered by a white woman, a 36-year-old white woman, who I know her name, but I will not name her because it's not about the perpetrators. We need to remember the victims, because I think a lot of it, the victim's story gets tied up in that of the perpetrator. So we don't need to know her name. It's online. You can put in Bristol stabbing and it will come up. But how many of us even heard about that? I mean, I think I saw it on the news once, and then It was quite far on in the newspaper, just a small little thing when she got charged. But one of the first things that I noticed, not only was this not being pushed, because it's a race hate crime, okay? The Eliane and Dam murder brought up a lot of the underbelly of society in terms of misogyny and this real deep hatred for women, which comes in beliefs, attitudes, and then eventually behavior. But it also shows how racism is on the rise, or I should say being reported more. I don't know if it's on the rise. I think racism and sexism, misogyny has always existed. I think now it's getting reported more. But it's interesting that when I read all the many articles I read about what happened in Croydon, it was a lot of senseless this and 1 foot knife, and they're very good at describing a situation to get you to see the horror. This is terrible. And it's also black on black. So we're gonna hear about that a lot more. But this crime where a white woman has, without provocation, attacked a black man simply for being black. Why are we not hearing about this? And I read the Evening Standard on both cases, and the difference in language was shocking. Like I said, senseless, horrific, postcode stuff, all of this stuff kept thrown in, even though the postcode stuff has got nothing to do with that incident. It's just a way of dehumanizing, in a way, and turning people into statistics. But no one had heard about this, a race hate crime in Britain, Bristol, one of the major cities of this country. And we don't know who Hubert Isaac is. I think we need to look at that, because the media do drive the narrative, and a lot of people that think the hood is something you put on your head and not a place that you walk through where people live in poverty would buy into that. You know, it's a lot of alleged. It was alleged incident and alleged race hate. There's nothing alleged about it. The man was killed for being black. Where's the alleged part? I'm confused. But I do think we need to really start questioning what the media feed us, because they're not independent. They have a stance. Freedom fighter, terrorist. It's just a different choice of words. So that rant's over. I can't control the media. They will continue to perpetuate their stereotypes and put those words in that shock and horrify people, dehumanizing young black men in particular that are losing their lives, putting them all in gangs, not really understanding what even a gang is. It's almost like a family situation. So these young people are losing family members, but that's not being spoken about because they're a danger to society. Watch some more Top Boy. So if you're not aware of what goes on the streets, please go to Netflix and watch Top Boy. Rishi, all of you man them in Parliament, start getting with the Top Boy. Watch Top Boy. Instead of talking nonsense about how you're going to do stuff to help communities that we know you're not going to do, watch Top Boy, mate, because I tell you what, this whole postcode stuff, it hasn't been about postcodes for many, many years. I grew up in Deptford and New Cross in the 80s and 90s, and a lot of the things then was about not necessarily postcodes, but areas. You had the Ghetto Boys, you had the Peckham Boys. Over in Brixton, where I am now, you had the 28s, and then you'd have all of the younger members that would have their own thing. But now there are so many different sets. So we're not calling them gangs. There's so many different sets within the same area. So it's not been about postcodes for years. So let's stop pushing that narrative because it dehumanizes. We had a stabbing in Brixton just last week, young man, and he was immediately categorized as being a gang retaliation. But sometimes as young people, you do really need to think about this, who you associate with. Because sometimes you're tied by association. This was, by all intent and purposes, a very decent young man. I saw his father speak. He's a very religious, God-fearing man and a drama teacher. And straight away, you can tell he's almost at the point where it's not about hate for him. He's just lost his son in the most tragic circumstances. And all he could think about was love and paying that forward to young people. And so it's absolutely heartbreaking. But don't just listen to what you see on the news, because they're pushing their own narrative. They want these children to become forgotten children. And we are being desensitized. So we hear another young man's lost his life and we immediately think, oh, he's a bad person. He's a gang member. He deserved to die. He's probably killed other people. Young people deserve the opportunity to grow old and learn from their mistakes. So I'll leave that there. But the murder of Eliane and Dam in Croydon at the end of September horrified us all. And I think one of the main ripple effects of that was the subject of misogyny. This sense of entitlement that seems to be reverberating through a lot of men and young men in society in general. I don't think it's a black or white issue. I do think toxic masculinity needs to be addressed. So for those of you that don't know or not really heard about toxic masculinity, we're talking about the set of stereotypical attitudes and beliefs about ways men should behave that tends to be regarded as negative, having a negative effect on women and society. So what can we do? Why is it important to challenge it? Because I feel like actions, so you've seen those violent actions, which a lot of people have put down to misogyny. That may or may not be the case, but we've seen instances recently of a lot of misogyny and women feeling scared to say no when they're being chatted up and threats of violence. But I do think that does come from a sense of entitlement. So women, are we having these conversations with our sons? Fathers, are we having these conversations with our sons? Are we examining our own attitudes towards toxic masculinity? Because sometimes we perpetuate it. Without realizing, we might say things like boys will be boys to excuse the behavior, or man is man to excuse quite harmful behavior. Things like she's such a drama queen. These kind of things, these kind of statements invalidate women's experiences. So you're actually putting it down to her being dramatic rather than actually listening to her or maybe validating some of her feelings. Back in the past, it was things like she's asking for it dressed like that. But I see it even amongst females commenting on a way a person's dressed as opposed to their lifestyle, just putting the two together. So it's not only men that do it, women do it as well. And I think that's what feeds into it. Because if women were challenging it all the time on every level, I don't think it would still be a problem. You know how women get, or my ex is crazy, another way of not taking accountability for maybe your toxic behavior, and gaslighting a woman. Women have the right to say no. We really do need to start challenging some of this language, but also as women and men of all races, don't use words that perpetuate stereotypes of women. Don't laugh at sexist jokes. Examine your own thoughts and actions towards women, and the misogynoir as well, black women also. But I do think we need to look at this and we need to challenge it on all levels. It's not okay. Because it's not that far a leap if you're thinking these things and you have this genuine building up this narrative and this hate towards women. Because when a woman does say no to you, there's that then setting a sequence of events that leads to violence. So we do need to be challenging that. But misogyny has always existed to a certain degree. I still think it will be something going forward. But until we challenge it and start becoming allies to women's experiences, and men can do it too. Challenge your mates when they say things that are inappropriate, because you wouldn't want your daughter or your sister to be spoken about in that way. So maybe that's a good way of men indicating, would you like that to be said about a woman that you love? And if the answer is no, then probably don't say it. That's my thing. So we can't not talk about knife crime. Knife crime is going on, it's everywhere. The government want to have more punitive measures, longer sentences for carrying knives, longer sentences for actions involving the use of a knife. And while that's all great, more stop and searches, while that's all great, I'll ask you, and it's going to be quite controversial to some who are buying into this narrative that we have a knife crime problem, but I'll tell you why I don't think we have a knife crime problem. If you took away all of the knives on the street today, would young people still be killing young people? Have a think about that for a second. Young people, maybe you can answer. If there were no knives and you see your op on the street, are you just going to leave your op because you don't have a knife? Or would you find something else to hand? So we don't have a knife crime problem. We have a mindset problem, okay? Knives don't kill people. People kill people. Rather than punishing children for carrying knives, we need to look into the reasons why they carry knives, because there are many reasons. Young people don't carry knives, a lot of them with the intention to be a perpetrator. Some do, and those are the ones that you really want to get a grip on. But a lot of young people actually carry knives out of fear. So either fear of being a victim or they've been a victim and they don't want to get caught slipping when they're G-checked. So we've got fearful young people that are carrying knives, and a lot of parents that are in the dark saying, my child wouldn't do that. Are you checking their person before they go out? Look into socks, ladies, because it's a very nice place to hide a knife. But like I say, taking away all the knives in the world will not stop young people from killing each other. We need to look at the reasons why they're killing each other. And that kind of brought me back to something else linked to Black history, but the murder of Tupac Shakur. So I remember that 27 years ago, killed in Las Vegas, died a few days later, was shot in Las Vegas, died a few. So there was all these theories, but 27 years. Was it 27 years ago? I still remember the day, like how you hear the people in America say, I remember where I was when JFK was shot. I remember where I was when I'd heard that Tupac had died. So it would be 1996, I would be 16. And it was my first week of sixth form, Christ the King sixth form, very good sixth form in South London. But my mum was in the States at the time and she'd called me when he'd been shot. And I remember thinking, okay, just another rapper got shot, no big deal. And at the time I was a Biggie fan. So it's a bit like Liverpool and Everton, Tottenham and Arsenal, maybe Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, I don't know. Can you like them both? It was the days where you picked a side, and my side was Biggie, but I actually got to know a lot of Tupac's music and what he stood for after his death. And I can say that I'm still one of his biggest fans. His music was ahead of his time. And it's good that in some ways, for maybe his surviving family members, that they get that justice, someone finally being arrested after 27 years of trying to incriminate himself. And I kid you not, this man told stories on himself. He is the reason he's going to jail. And my theory is the book that he's wrote will probably sell more copies if he gets convicted of the murder of Tupac. Because let's face it, we already knew what happened. So we didn't need him to tell us, but his intention to keep telling us. But Tupac was a very interesting character, often misunderstood, a lot like some of the youth today, because some of the youth do good things. But his acronym, and I do know the difference between an acronym and an anagram. I know on my last podcast I said anagram when it should have been acronym, I assure you. I do know, but I get muddled up sometimes, please forgive me. But his acronym, you see Thug Life, and to those that don't know, they're probably thinking he's paying testament to being a thug. It's nothing like that. So let's break that down. The hate you give little infants fucks everybody. Rishi Sunak, are you watching? The hate you give little infants fucks everybody. Yeah. So this succession of conservative governments, they took away all the provisions, all of the things to develop young people. So not just the youth clubs, but the youth services, the signposting services, all of that stuff. So what do you expect? But straight away, when what happened in Croydon happened, there's a lot of stuff on social media, and I read the comments because I like to see what the wider society are commenting on and how they feel about things. And I must admit, I was quite horrified by some of the things that I saw. I think it's understandable for people to be angry, but some of the things that I heard would not be a solution to anything. Revenge is not a solution. An eye for an eye leaves the world blind. So one of the first things I want to say before I get into the factors that I think contribute to knife crime and having a look at some of the factors that other people have put forward, I just want to talk about the ripple effect. I think it's a mental health podcast, and it's important that we understand that what we're going through mentally when we're processing things and we're feeling sad, because I know a lot of people have felt sad. I know some people that couldn't sleep when they heard what happened to Eliane and Dan, and largely parents, but some people without children, they cried. They had no issue empathizing with what's happened to this young girl, empathizing with her parents, and they actually taken some of that pain and feeling like it was a community, loss rather than a personal loss as a family. But what I like to remind people is that whatever crime it is, whether it be murder, burglary, there is a victim and a perpetrator, but there's also a ripple effect. Now, my friend Rachel Webb spoke a lot about it on the Complex Grief, A Mother's Story, and it's just really, really shocking. She spoke about the ripple effect, and I think these young people doing this stuff, I don't think they give much thought to the future, but when they commit a crime, it doesn't just affect the victim and the victim's family, it also affects their family and the people that love them. But there's a wider effect on society, because I feel like this has had an effect on a lot of people. So it's important to remember that the perpetrator has family, and immediately the parents to blame is his mum's fault. What I will say is, because I do have empathy in a lot of situations that maybe some people don't, and the family of that perpetrator also have my empathy, my sympathy, and thoughts and all the love and positivity in the world are with the parents and family of Eliane and Dam. But my thoughts and prayers and empathy still rests with the family of the perpetrator, you know, because they are tied by association. They haven't done anything wrong, but their lives will never be the same again either. In some ways, we've lost 2 young people, one to death and one to the system. It's a difficult pill to swallow because it's not just one person that's affected. When this young man goes to jail, as too rightly he should, and I hope he gets a very long sentence, to think about his actions, to take accountability and to rehabilitate, his family are going through that sentence with him. When you do time in prison, your loved ones do time as well. So have a look at that ripple effect. But I think the major ripple effect that I'm concerned about is the impact on young people's mental health. Without a doubt, I remember being young and I think I lost one or two friends in childhood, both to illness, which is the natural order of things. If you die because you're ill, it's a lot more acceptable. I'm not saying it's any less painful, but you understand that logically. But these children, some of them are maybe 14, 15, 16, 17, and they've lost not just one friend to a tragic murder, but several friends. I know a lot of people see angry young people, but I always remember that anger hides pain. So I see a lot of young people that are in pain, potentially dealing with PTSD, complex PTSD, all the trauma involved with losing friends and no doubt having to go to funerals and asking themselves why. And then that impact making them fearful for their own lives in the process. Like, am I even going to make it out of being a teenager? I don't feel like we have those fears. So the impact on young people's mental health is a big ripple effect. I see a lot of young people in therapy. I speak to a lot of young people and I've heard stories that are so shocking to me. It's not very hard or not very easy to shock me, but I've heard stories of young people that were on the phone to their friends as they took their last breath while they were en route to their house. They didn't make it. And being on the phone as this murder occurs and hearing those last words and those final breaths. I mean, how many of us have been through that? So parents, are you getting your children help if they've lost friends to this knife crime? Because we don't want children growing up with stuff like this in their backpack. So I do feel like it's very easy. So I'm just going to move quickly on and ask, are parents to blame? Because I see a lot of that straight away. It's the parents, it's the poverty. And to a certain degree, I do agree with parts of that because there is some whatless parenting and some lack of boundaries and children going through adverse childhood experiences. So to a certain degree, parents play into that role. But what parents are we talking about? Are we talking about single parents who are on benefits, who seem to always get the brunt of it? When did it suddenly become single parents' fault for everything that happened? How many of us were raised by single parents and don't go around attacking and murdering people? So it's not single parents that are causing this. But then are we talking about the maybe parent that's in a toxic relationship just so that they're not labeled a single parent and how that may potentially affect the child? 2-parent families. So this ideal 2-parent family, 2.4 children. Sorry to tell you, but kids that have those experiences still go on to be both victims and perpetrators. So are the parents to blame? We do have to look at this. I think there is some really bad parenting. And like I say, if you're abusing your children and not raising them to know the right things, but I also think parents get unfairly criticised because I've been a kid. And I think as an adult, sometimes you forget that you've actually been a child. Like I've been a child and I was out here doing things that to this day, my mum doesn't know I was doing. Maybe none that was risking someone else's life, but I damn sure risked my own life a few times. And I've got sisters and they kept things from parents. And I think parents on the whole, and I think especially probably nowadays is even worse, are in the dark. I feel like they have this image of their children that may be only half the reality. I do think children are quite duplicitous at times. They're able to be one person at home and one person on the street. They're able to show manners and respect, but then completely be feral on the streets. And there are a lot of young people that are definitely lacking boundaries. I will say that because Everyone says, oh, but you can't beat your children. You shouldn't have to beat your children to number one, discipline them, and to two, to get them to be respectful. So I do feel like kids know right from wrong from a very early age. So obviously monkey see, monkey do. So if you parents are out here doing hella crazy things and showing your kids, maybe oversharing with your children. Another thing that really bothers me, and I know a few of my friends have got this going on, and I try not to comment, but it severely bothers me. Children calling their parents by their names. Now, other than the fact that this is your mum and she gave birth to you, I feel like just having that title mum or uncle or auntie, whatever it might be, it reminds a young person before they say what they're going to say. So I might say mum, and me in the act of just saying that, I know to come correct. I code switch back onto mum level. This is how I talk to my mum. But why are we allowing our children to call us by our names? Is it because we don't want to be parents? Last of the hot girl summer? Is that what we're trying to preserve? Is it because we want to be friends with our kids? Because the job of a parent is not to be your friend. My mum told me on numerous occasions while she was disciplining me, I'm not your friend. That is not my role. That is not my role. So I think, yeah, it's different for us. Some of us got licks, and most of us will say it didn't do us no harm. Times have changed and you can't necessarily beat your children, and nor should you. Because if you have to beat a child to get them to listen to you, I think there's other ways. But we can take it back to old school. These children need firm boundaries. And we don't just try boundaries for 1 week and give up. We have to continue. Children are going to push your boundaries all the time. But we don't give in to children. We maintain our boundaries. But I feel like we need to go back to the old school in general. So how many of you parents actually know your children's friends? Are you able to put a name to this person? Have they been to your house? Have you sussed them out? Because we're older and more experienced and we know these things. Do you talk to their parents, or do you even know their parents? Do these friends even exist? You know, so that it takes a village stuff starts with those simple things. Who are your children's friends? My mum used to say, show me your friends and show me the company that you keep and show me you. So who are these friends? And who are these friends' parents? So you may be letting your children spend time in another home. What is this home like? Are you encouraging your kids to imagine and dream? I feel like we've lost that to some degree. You know, when I used to see children and when I was a child, people used to always say to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do we even ask kids this anymore? Are we allowing them to imagine a future, have plans for the future? Because I think having something to look forward to enables you then to have a plan and to find your way out of all of this stuff that you're trying to navigate. So are you noticing subtle changes in your children? So we spoke about it on the Black and British when I had my friend Ez on. It's about your children better than anybody. Are you noticing those subtle changes in their behavior? Maybe the moodiness, more angry. And if necessary, are you getting your children help? Getting your children help, I've said it before, is not a sign that you failed. It will just mean that child doesn't grow up potentially with having anger issues or pain issues, because that's what we're masking, and then inflicting that on society. But having difficult conversations with your children, and it came up straight away, we need to teach our sons how to deal with rejection. Pause, stop, and listen. We first need to look at how we deal with rejection. Because remember I said monkey see, monkey do. How do we deal with rejection? I know that is something that I've had to work on as an adult. Even as a therapist, it's something that I continue to work on, because rejection doesn't feel nice no matter how old you are. But, you know, if that door's closed for you, then it's not your door. But we have to look at how we deal with rejection and then have these difficult conversations with our female children and our male children and the non-binary ones too. We need to have these difficult conversations with our children and explain to them that, yes, rejection does hurt and it will hurt for a little while, but you will come through that and you will potentially find someone better for you. Because why would you want to be with someone that's not 100% for you? But if we don't have these difficult conversations with our children, the first time they experience rejection, how do they deal with it? How have they seen you deal with it? Having those difficult conversations with your kids. And like I say, getting your kids help if need be, you know, because children living in poverty is a problem. We know that they're 4 times or 4.5 times more likely to develop a serious mental health problem or mental illness. But another thing that maybe as parents, we don't have as much time to do because we might be working 1, 2, 3 jobs. We might be a single parent, so there's only one of us. We've got loads of kids, but we have to get better at spending quality time with our children, because as a parent and as a wider family, we have to program our children with so much love that society cannot brainwash them to be desensitized. Improve their self-esteem, let them know what they're good at, support their dreams, give them activities, get children into activities as soon as you can. You're doing the best thing for them. You're keeping them off the road and you're giving them opportunities to figure out what it is that they're good at. Because I feel like these kids these days, they don't know what they want to be. When was the last time you asked a child what they want to be when they grow up? Children these days, I don't even think they expect to grow up. And I think that's really, really, really sad. So that's kind of covered the next question. Are we too familiar with our kids? So potentially that's an issue. I don't want a parent bash, because parents are the ones that, for the most part, some of us have really, like I say, not good parents, or maybe we were not raised by our parents. But I'm just going to extend that term to whoever cares for you as a child. And, you know, I feel like being familiar with your kids. Please don't let your child call you by your name. Everyone says it's a personal choice, but I think it sets the wrong precedent. And maybe they take that and they transfer that to other adults, and that can't run. Kids these days are, I'm not going to lie, are a bit rude out here. But when I see a rude child, I think, what was their example and what were the boundaries set for them? I don't deal particularly well with rude children, but I'll take that up with the parents. Yeah, so having those boundaries is important. But let's have a look at society. So is society to blame? So I'm going to include the government and people like that in society, and they're to blame. Yes, I think there's a big element of blame that lies with society, but not just the government. So they've taken away all of the youth services. And I said it at the time, and it's come true. Like, how could we have allowed them to do that? They've taken away the things that promote and develop and maintain young people, where all of these mental health problems that young people have potentially would get picked up somewhere. All the signposting. We had something called Connections in Lewisham. Thanks, Sleepy, for reminding me of that. But even the things that help support young people, do we even have careers advisors anymore? But we can't rely on the government, because like I say, the hood is something that Richie Sunak puts on his head. He's never lived a day in the life in anyone's hood, okay? Let him walk through the hood without all of the cameras. He wouldn't come to the hood. He can't come to the hood. But what do these people, how can we expect these people to help us and help the society that they never see? London has some of the best sites in the world, but that's not the London that most of us see. Where I live, there are bleed control kits and helicopters going around overnight, and that's what young people are seeing. So yes, the government are to blame because they took away everything. They feed the narrative of these postcode wars and do a very good job of turning these children into statistics. But let's not even waste time talking about the government, because they're not going to help, all right? It takes a village to raise a child. And for many, many years now, there has been no damn village. There's no village. Adults that are in the wider community are either scared or they have an attitude of apathy. And I think apathy is the worst position to be in, just not caring about anything. We say this is happening and young people, but how many adults would intervene if they saw a young person being robbed or G-checked? Because it happens in front of adults, and adults turn a blind eye to this nonsense. Why are we as adults scared to talk to children? It takes a village. So it's not just the parents, it's the aunties, uncles, friends. Build up those relationships with your children's friends. The wider society, so they say there's nothing for young people to do. The apprenticeships, some of them are ridiculous amount, £4 an hour or just a bit more. Who can live on that? That's not realistic. I'd rather be a trapper. That's what they're going to say. Why am I going to be on an apprenticeship? I do want to learn these skills, but guess what? I can't survive on that. My mum or my family and my little sisters, we need money. I'm going to start trapping. People that are in business, black, white, are we giving young people opportunities? Are we giving them those jobs when they come into our places of work, giving them opportunities to get their first experience, rather than telling them you have no experience, I'm not going to employ you? Where do you get experience from? Young people can be carers. They can be trappers. But we're not giving them any opportunities to work. Why are we not encouraging young people to open their own business? But like I say, the media drives the narrative. You always hear about all of the negative things to do with young people. But there are so many young people out there that are doing things. We had Perry Blake on this podcast a few weeks back, who is the CEO of his own movement. They didn't give him any opportunities. They didn't give him a seat at the table, so he built his own table, and he's putting chairs around it for young people to fulfill their dreams. Give them that, share success stories, let people see a different side to it, different narrative. This is a big one. We need to overhaul the education system. All right. Some of you may know about the education and healthcare plan, the EHCP. Some of these schools are getting onwards of close to 40 grand a year. I think about 39 grand a year for just one child that is on an EHCP plan. How are they implementing this? Why are schools still got this one size fits all to education? Are they picking up neurodivergence? Why are they sending children to PRUs, that pupil referral units that are preparing them for jail? What are we trying to do to these young people? Are we trying to criminalize them before they have contact with the criminal justice system? What are we doing? So we need to look at the education system. And parents, if you feel like the education system is failing your child, challenge it, and if need be, homeschool. Because a lot of children are failed by the education system. You know, does it give them dreams? You know, how do I get to become this, what I want to be? We don't want our kids to just be aspiring to be rappers and athletes and footballers. While that is good, there's more than one way to leave the hood. I ain't trying to rhyme, but let's just say that. Now, a lot of children that are involved in potentially friction in their areas or potentially have some kind of involvement with gangs are housing associations and councils supporting relocation for these type of children. Because how are they going to be given an opportunity to turn their life around if they now have ops everywhere? It's going to draw them back into that lifestyle. So why are we not supporting? I know my neighbour upstairs has 2 young boys, both teenagers, and she's been fighting the council for years to get them moved. Her child's been stabbed, and there's been a few close run-ins with being stabbed again. So there's that. I feel like what we can do as a community, that we don't have to rely on the government as a society, is intervene in primary schools. So it's wonderful, people going into secondary schools and telling them about knife crime and the effects of knife crime, but I'll tell you something, it's too late. Even languages, starting to learn at 11 is too late. These ideas are already formed. You're going to be up against a brick wall. You need to get people into primary schools talking about it, and I think it should be the OGs from the area. I think it should be ex-offenders. So rather than capital punishment, hanging everybody, maybe we rehabilitate them and use these people to talk to these young people. Because if you're not someone that they respect or look up to, they're not going to listen to you. Do you think man like Rishi Sunak could sit down with a roadman and tell him anything? It wouldn't happen. You need to get someone that knows the language they speak, that understands all of the reasons why they do this stuff, because it's not what the media say. I feel like there needs to be more mental health support in schools. I know you have Place to Be that sometimes have therapists in secondary schools, but once again, primary schools. Get young people comfortable talking about mental health and recognizing how to combat mental health, because a lot of young people are dealing with a lot of stuff. So, you know, it's a lot. I hear a lot as well that is financial deprivation, and that does play into it, because kids that live in poverty are more likely to have mental health problems, probably parents with mental health problems as well. But I think the biggest problem is not even financial deprivation. I think what's worse is the social deprivation. And I think that's come from many, many years of kids having nothing to look forward to. So don't get mad when they're on social media and they want to be influencers. Don't get mad at the rappers that are just speaking about what they see. You're blaming the rappers. It's the music that they're listening to. It's the drill rappers. No, it's not. No, it's not. They're talking about what they see. If you don't like what they're rapping about, change that reality for them and so they can start rapping about roses. Life is not roses for certain people, and you need to understand. So we can't blame social media and other people when we're not giving children an alternative. They're seduced by a lifestyle, and you can't even blame them, because what is the alternative? You know, they all get put in a box, and they have to fit in this box in society. Like, young people are troubled. Some of them are doing very well. I don't know how you guys feel. There's a lot of things come up. How do you feel about knife crime? Let's talk about it. Do you feel like it's the parents? Do you think It's society. What about individual responsibility? Kids know right from wrong. Is it the parents' fault or society's fault if a young person makes that choice? So there's a certain amount of individual responsibility, but what we shouldn't be doing is judging. So don't judge someone's choices if you don't know the options that they had. So it might be nice for you that you have all these options, that are the undercurrent to your choices, but what if all your choices are bad? Give these young people something to aspire to. Remember, the hate you give little infants fucks everybody. This is already a generational problem. It's not going to go away overnight, but it's not a knife crime problem. It's a mindset problem. And until we change the mindset, it's going to feed into another generation and we're all fucked. We really, really, really need to get a closer look at this and stop looking at outside factors. Just look at what we can do. Volunteer to be a mentor. If you're someone that's successful, spare a few hours a week and mentor a young person. Show them the right way. Show them a different way. Not even the right way, because I don't think they're being shown many alternatives. But it does feel like a really negative society that we're living in, but there's so much good things. But the children are our future, and we have to look at how we're dealing with that. But we can talk about what parents can do, what as a society can do, but I feel like there needs to be a separate message for young people. Young people, I know that you're scared, you're grieving, you're fearful, you're angry, you're worrying what the future looks like. You're conflicted, but us as adults, we just want you to grow old and be able to experience life and have those dreams. So if you're in a situation where you're being G-checked or you feel unsafe, don't be afraid to run. It's better to be alive. Don't worry about what people think. And I know that I've been young, and I know that young people in particular care a lot about what others think of them, how they're perceived. But I think it's very important to be an individual. Growing up, there was always bad influences, but I felt like I was so grounded with the experience that my mum gave me at home that I didn't feel the need to follow. So our kids these days are afraid to stand out. So what I would say to you kids is don't be afraid to stand out. Question things. Don't blindly follow your friends. If you think it's something that's not right, don't go along with it. Because a lot of young people get themselves into situations following friends. Imagine your future. How often do young people even get a chance to imagine their future? Dreams shouldn't have barriers in them. Dreams and aspirations are what we all need to remain productive and to have motivation and to have something to look forward to and to have a purpose, which I feel like maybe is a bit missing. Have a plan. So, you've got this dream, but now have a plan. How are you going to carry this out? And this is where the older people, your parents, your aunties, uncles, the village step in. Are we supporting those plans and those dreams? As young people, seek like-minded individuals. There's this whole idea that you all have to be the same. Sometimes I see some of the young girls, they all have the same hair, the same eyelashes. Don't be afraid to stand out. Seek like-minded individuals. Some young people like science. We don't all like sports and music. Some people like science. Are we calling these kids neeks? Seek out like-minded individuals. Find your tribe. Talk to someone if you feel like you're struggling. Because sometimes parents, they miss things. Maybe you're good at hiding stuff and they're not aware what your mental health is really like. But talk to someone if you feel like you may be struggling. This is an important one. If you're worried about the behavior of a friend, so say you have a friend and all of a sudden they're acting differently, maybe carrying knives, saying hateful things towards women, just moving different. Talk to an adult that you trust, because then that puts it onto that adult who knows the right things to do to address it. They don't have to tell the person that you've told them. They can approach that young person on a different level. I think a lot of what goes on with the young people is just a lot of projection. So it may seem like they hate each other, but I think it stems from them hating themselves. And if you have nothing to look forward to and people are always telling you you're bad or you're going to amount to nothing, then why would you like yourself? And if you don't like yourself, why would you like others that look like you? I understand why some of you carry weapons. It's not all for the same reasons. You're really fearful. But I want you guys to start imagining a future with you in it. And guys, carrying a knife, you're more likely to use it. You're more likely to be the victim of knife crime. by carrying a knife. You may have a knife, the person that you pull that knife on may have a bigger knife. So don't be afraid to run. If you're going through an area that maybe you're not familiar with, don't go alone. A lot of these young people that experience this are singled out. They're caught out there by themselves. Maybe people would think twice if there were like maybe 3, 4 of you. So don't just imagine that you will be safe in certain areas. You have to be mindful that there are some things that are dangerous out there. You may get G-checked if you go somewhere else, but I feel like if you have activities to do, you're around like-minded people, you can avoid a lot of it. And very soon, you won't be young people anymore. You'll be adults. And the way you think and feel about everything, the opinions of your friends will matter so much less to you. That's what becoming an adult is, basically, just not really caring what people think anymore. So we can talk about parents and we can talk about society, but we need to start talking to our young people, finding out what really makes them tick, what really makes them afraid. And I think once we start doing all those things, looking at what we can do in the home, what we can do as a society, and what young people can take responsibility of and do themselves, I think we'll have a much better future. It really is a lot, but there's no one factor that's more important than another. I think they all feed into each other. So this podcast, we spoke about quite a few things. So we've looked at Black History Month. We've looked a bit at Black-owned businesses. We will get into more of that. So any people out there that want to come on or speak about Black-owned businesses and promote their business at the same time, please feel free to contact me via my social media. So that's A Podcast 26 on IG, Lead the Therapist on my YouTube channel, and at Lead the Therapist on TikTok. But guys, what I've also become aware of is that YouTube is actually messing with my life. A lot of my subscribers are not receiving notifications. So all I will say is that bad news spreads. We need to start spreading things with more positive messages. I feel like negative things get a lot more feedback and a lot more people watching and engaging. But I feel like don't rely on YouTube. Check back, because there will be regular podcasts. So if you're not getting those notifications, it's not always helpful. But if you like what you hear, like it. If you don't agree with what you heard, comment. If you think that someone that you know needs to hear this, share. Because we need to start spreading positive things, start becoming a part of the solution instead of the problem. Society is so negative. We want all the tea. We want to see the destruction of people's lives. How about we start becoming a part of the solution? We already know what the problem is. I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of questions. And I feel like the starting point should be sensible questions. So blame is not always helpful. Okay, so it's the parents' fault. Now what? What do? We still have to do something about it. I think we need to start looking into ourselves. So I think over the next few podcasts, I might do a few more freestyle ones. I'd like to take a deeper look at seasonal depression, because it's getting a lot darker now. It was dark by 7 o'clock, and a lot of people are affected by SAD and don't know. So we can potentially look into some tips on how to combat that, because it's going to be a long winter ahead. Feels like some Game of Thrones thing, like some long winter, the winter's coming. But yeah, I think it's difficult to, it would probably be better to have people to bounce ideas off, because I know we all have different ideas about how to combat knife crime or the mindset problem that our young people have. But be a part of the solution. Capital punishment is not going to change anything. An eye for an eye leaves the world blind. We care about these young people, and we want them to have a future. We want them to grow up and be miserable adults like us. It's not enough just to raise your kids or provide for them financially. We have to be instilling things in them. So remember what I said earlier on? We need to program our children with so much love and morals, okay? That society cannot brainwash them to be desensitized to the point where they will not think about picking up a knife or a gun or a brick or a toothbrush, because you can cause harm with anything. It's the mindset problem. It's not a knife problem. And that needs to be the starting point of future discussions. So let's go back. World Mental Health Day. What are you guys doing for self-care? I had a really good date yesterday, so that's helped my mental health, feeling good, all those endorphins flowing. But start looking at what we're doing to promote our mental health, because if we're going to keep listening to the news, it's going to be a lot of negativity that we're consuming without realizing. We have to restore that with some positive energy. So a lot of self-care going forward. It's not strange to feel sad or cry for a person or a young person that you've never met. It's perfectly normal. And I think when people start connecting with these victims' experiences, I feel like that's where the change comes from, just feeling that pain and thinking, how must it be for those parents? What can we do to help? So, guys, I've got some work to do. Got a client in a couple of hours, so I'm going to go off. But please, like I say, start engaging with this podcast. If there's something you want to see discussed, or if you want to be a guest, contact me. We need to start having these conversations. Join the discussion, be part of the discussion. I'm not going to say things that everybody agrees with, and that's fine. Disagree, but let's have a conversation. But on that note, guys, Lee's out, Taps out, and I'll see you next time.